for passengers to technically time travel. Flight UA200 was scheduled to leave Guam on January 1st at 7:35 a.m. and land in Honolulu, Hawaii on December 31st at 6:50 p.m.
But the flight was delayed, leaving Guam and landed in Honolulu at 12:34 a.m. on January 1st, causing passengers to miss out. So to ease the frustration, the United passenger bookings.
Each year, a few airlines offer passengers the opportunity to redo their New Year's celebrations. A pet
for opposition rival Xochitl Galvez. The Mexican president serves one 6-year term. Then, from June 6th to 9th, citizens in 27 EU member states will vote for members of the European Parliament. About 400 million eligible voters will choose their representatives. That's 720 seats in total. Members serve 5-year terms. No party has held a majority, so the parliament depends on parties forming coalitions. Currently, there is a major coalition between the People's Party and the Socialists. Right-leaning politicians scored recent victories in Italy and the Netherlands. It's worth seeing whether the trend will continue in the 2024 EU election. Finally, on November 5th, the U.S. will have its presidential election. Incumbent President Joe Biden, a Democrat, is running for a second term. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump, a Republican, is also running for his second term in office. The race is likely going to be a rematch between Biden and Trump, just like in 2020. The latest polls show Trump dominating the Republican primary.
Passengers on a United Airlines. Here's their story.
Family in Florida acted as a good Samaritan when they found an abandoned baby squirrel. They named him Mr. Peaches.
They went outside and they found a baby squirrel abandoned on our deck. And they brought him in, and I was out, and I came home, and my daughter was holding this little, I thought it was a rat at first, and it was Mr. Peaches.
Little did they know the positive effect he would have on their family and the lessons they have learned from him.
I don't know, it taught me about nature, and I sit and I play with this little squirrel, and I just, you know, I understand it's a wild animal, but the fact that he bonded with us and crawls on us and completely trusts us, it's an amazing thing. So he's definitely taught me to slow down, quiet down, and look around and feel nature.
Videos of Mr. Peaches went viral and racked up millions of social media views. Fans of her videos encouraged her to write a book.
We used actual pictures. That's my dog, but we cartoon them. So it's the real background to my house, but the squirrel and the dog are animated, and everything rhymes. It was Jake who found me and brought me home. Nevermore do I want to roam. Life is peachy. It's very cute.
Mr. Peaches entered their lives during a difficult time, when the family had just lost someone close to them. The support they provide for each other has been beneficial for everyone involved. Fans of their social media videos also get happiness from watching the antics of Mr. Peaches.
As well.
Why don't you focus on
the Homeland Security says the impeachment will take New Yorkers over here.
Downplay concerns that he called from departments.
Embattled Harvard has a resignation 6-year tenure.
The move comes after a tumultuous following Gay's testimony about campus anti-Semitism.
Is calling for the genocide of Jews, violate Harvard's rules of bullying, and yes,
and be depending next.
Gay soon came under pressure to resign from the Universal and as some donor ended or withdrew. Harman billionaire investor Ekman Rooks is personally aware than $1 billion of the donation from Rupert's most generous. More than 70 lawmakers signed a letter offering of the University and teased President Sally Kornbluth, both who testified at the same congressional hearing, so declined a definitive yes or no answer whether calling for that is with school's conduct, ruling and again days after. Last month, Harvard's Alumni Association Executive Committee said it unanimously and unequivocally supported the president. But on another front, a House committee widened its probe into anti-Semitism at Harvard to include an investigation into plagiarism in Gay's academic writing. faced widespread criticism after the plagiarism accusations emerged, including multiple instances of missing quotation marks and citations. Jacob Miller, Harvard student and Hillel president, said Gay stepping down is just the first step.
For me, the most important issue has been the anti-Semitism we've been seeing on a nearly daily basis across the school.
In her resignation letter, Gay said, quote, "It has been distressing to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus." Harvard Corporation defended Gay and said they accepted her resignation with sorrow. The corporation, which is the university's governing body, said she showed remarkable resilience in the face of deeply personal and sustained attacks. Although Gay has stepped down as president, she will remain at Harvard, returning to a position on the
What
school's
about all the
faculty.
Jewish students?
Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Dozens of allegations of plagiarism. Harvard's board for weeks had defended Gay against those accusations. The board has also supported Gay
Doesn't
after
deserve
comments
that
about
money.
anti-Semitism in front of Congress last month.
It's unclear what Gay's position will be following her resignation. Provost Alan Garner says he will serve as Harvard's interim president.
Here to
That's
discuss
why
this Harvard
education
University
costs so
shakeup is
much.
senior counsel at the Lawfare Project, Gerard. Gerard, what difference will the resignation of Claudine Gay make to anti-Semitism at Harvard University?
The resignation is a step in the right direction. It shows that this is now an opportunity for a new leader to properly address the anti-Semitism we've seen, including the calls for the genocide of the Jewish people. However, hatred against Jews remains systemic. Harvard Corporation did not fire her. She was allowed to resign, and even when she resigned, she tried to inject racism into it instead of addressing the very racism that she allowed to continue on campus while she was president. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, now Gay is said to remain employed at Harvard with a salary comparable to her almost $900,000. What does that say about her future role and influence at the university?
It suggests that she will have continued influence in the years to come. It is a little outrageous that she continues to be paid at that high level. In the corporate world, we would call that a golden parachute. She is essentially being paid off to resign and not facing any significant consequences for her failure to uphold the civil rights of Jewish students. So the salary is an issue that she is being paid so much. The question remains why, and these are questions that the Harvard Corporation needs to answer.
Yeah, and about the Harvard Corporation, Harvard's board has stuck with Gay this whole time. Now there's talk of shaking up the board. What impact could that have on anti-Semitism at Harvard, like we're talking about here?
That may very well have a positive impact. Harvard has had issues with racism and anti-Semitism for many, many years, for decades, in fact. It's only recently started to come to terms and atone for its anti-Black racism. I think that changing the corporate makeup, changing the board, may jumpstart a process of healing for Jewish students as well, and proper enforcement of their civil rights so they're no longer targeted on campus.
You mentioned Harvard has had problems with anti-Semitism in the past. Can you just touch on that briefly, what has happened in the past?
New accusations of corruption and bribery. The superseding indictment released yesterday claims the New Jersey Democrat used the influence to help secure an investment for a co-conspirator from a fund tied to Qatar's government. In addition to bribery charges, Menendez is accused of acting as a foreign agent for the government of Egypt. That's for allegedly helping the country to benefit another co-defendant's export business. Menendez's attorney stated Tuesday that the government doesn't have the proof to back up any of the accusations, calling them baseless, bizarre, and based on routine lawful contacts between constituents or foreign officials. Menendez has resisted calls to step down from the Senate. GOP presidential candidate Chris Christie says he's disappointed with the Democrats for not taking solid action.
You know, at least the Republicans removed George Santos. Where are the Democrats in the United States Senate with removing this guy? This is now a second superseding indictment, so it's a third set of charges.
Christie says it's too big a risk given Menendez's position of leadership and access to U.S. intelligence. Menendez's trial is set for May 6. Of the location and impact. A cyber scam targets an exchange student in Utah. Authorities and are breaking news as we come on the air tonight. Hundreds of pages of unsealed documents from a lawsuit connected to accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein were publicly released this afternoon. On the list included the former president, Mrs. True, and the French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, who, like Epstein, died while awaiting trial. We'll bring you more tomorrow as we learn more about the full list. Dozens of House Republicans are at the southern border in Eagle Pass, Texas. Their trip comes as Customs and Border Patrol saw a record high number of illegal crossings in December, around 300,000 crossings. That's roughly the size of the city of Orlando crossing into the United States illegally in a single month. NTD's congressional correspondent Melina Weisskopf reports for us.
House Republicans have made several trips to the southern border, but this is the first time that Mike Johnson is leading a delegation as the speaker, and it comes at a time when pressure is high, as right now the Senate is working on a deal with the White House. They're trying to find common ground solutions over immigration and border policy, how to change those policies to fix the immigration issue. But House Republicans, they have their own list of demands, much of which includes returning to Trump-era border policies, such as the Remain in Mexico policy. This delegation was made up of around 64 Republican lawmakers from 26 states, the Republican speaker says, and they met with Border Patrol agents, they met with local residents, they viewed processing centers, all to get a grip of the current situation at the border. Here's what those Republicans had to say about the urgency of the issue, arguing why their demands deserve to be met.
When President Trump entered the Oval Office, he put in the Remain in Mexico policy, he ended the catch and release policy, he did the fundamental common sense things that stem the flow. It was down to a tiny fraction of what it is right now. In December alone, it's the highest number in history. And it's going to continue because they're showing no inclination at all to change it.
The greatest domestic threat to the national security and the safety of the American people is Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
And that last person you just heard from was Congressman Mark Green. He's the chairman on the Homeland Security Committee here. He says that next week his committee will officially begin those impeachment proceedings against DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, arguing that he has failed to uphold his duty to secure the border. But the DHS Secretary has pushed back, saying he simply doesn't have the money or the resources to 100% carry out his job effectively, saying that the ball is now in Congress's court. Take a look at what he had to say.
We need additional personnel to advance our security at the border. We need technology to advance our fight against fentanyl. We need additional asylum officers to really accelerate the asylum adjudication process.
But Republicans argue that if Congress does give the DHS more money, that money will only be used to process more illegal immigrants and release them into the country rather than use the money to try to stem the flow of illegal immigration to begin with. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
In the Iranian city of Kerman, after twin blasts near the burial site of the slain military commander Qasem Soleimani. The Iranian Red Crescent posted a video on its social media platform X on Wednesday, which shows wounded people being treated following two explosions at a ceremony to mark the third anniversary of the killing of top commander Qasem Soleimani in a U.S. drone strike in Iraq. Iranian state television reported a first and then a second blast during a crowded anniversary event at the cemetery where Soleimani is buried in the southeastern city of Kerman. An unnamed official told the state news agency IRNA that 2 explosive devices planted along the road leading to Kerman's Martyr Cemetery were detonated remotely by terrorists. The explosions threatened to accelerate tensions in the region that have spiked since the start of the Israel-Hamas war in Gaza. Former President Donald Trump is trying to get back on the Maine primary ballot in 2024. The 45th president and current GOP presidential frontrunner asked the court in Maine to overturn the decision that resulted in his removal. In his filing, Trump accuses Maine Secretary of State Shanna Bellows of political bias. Last week, Bellows said she had a legal obligation to take Trump off the ballot because of his actions during the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. Trump is also dealing with the 14th Amendment-related challenges to his ability to run for president in numerous states. That includes Colorado, where the state Supreme Court removed Trump from its primary ballot. Today, Trump asked the U.S. Supreme Court to review Colorado's ruling. Any ruling from the High Court will be the final say in Trump's eligibility.
To bring charges in other states, which is questionably legal in and of itself. Jack Smith also did not make his oath to office within a reasonable time period, suggesting none of what he did could be possibly legal in the beginning. And also, Jack Smith was not a private citizen when he was appointed to become special counsel, which also possibly violates the standards of appointing a special counsel. Meaning, there's a lot of different hurdles that Smith is going to have when it comes to this, especially if it goes to the Supreme Court. And Trump is actually challenging all of these things. And also remember, when Trump is bringing up the implications of what it means to have presidential immunity, if the Supreme Court determines that presidents do not have broad and sweeping immunity, that yes, they can be charged with crimes, actually the stuff Trump brings up could have serious implications for Biden. And we could even say that even Barack Obama before him, maybe even Bill Clinton and others, maybe even George Bush could be charged with crimes. We'll have to see. Now, Trump is bringing up a few pretty big things here. He's talking about how Biden illegally received massive amounts of money from foreign countries, China, Ukraine, Russia. There is evidence of that. Of course, House Republicans are bringing a lot of this forward. The question is, how much was he actually involved in the dealings of Hunter Biden? I do think the documents coming out now suggest that, well, Biden was at the very least involved with it. They're saying he was not financially involved, suggesting he was not getting money from it. But without a doubt, he was playing some role. Keep in mind, they could go after that criminally, even if he was not directly financially involved. That's the way that mafia cases typically work. You know, the mob boss, if you go after a mafia, the mob boss typically keeps out of the dirty work. The mob boss typically does not get involved in on-the-ground work. You know, crime families, this is how they work. And that's why you have things like RICO, racketeering and so on. And it is possible they could go after Joe Biden using RICO, even if he's not, financially involved in the, alleged crimes of Hunter Biden. We do know he was involved to an extent, and yes, based on RICO, that could be enough to go after him. Trump mentions that Biden paid off Ukraine to fire an unfriendly prosecutor. That's where Biden went on video, by the way, and says that, he got this prosecutor fired who notably was looking into Burisma, the company which Hunter Biden was working for, looking into corruption, which, yes, could have gone after Hunter Biden. That is an actual case, very likely, of quid pro quo, and Joe Biden admitted it on video, in fact. Trump mentions that Biden allowed millions of people to illegally enter and destroy our country. That is the case. Joe Biden has been destroying the border. He's been destroying border security, even going after Texas for trying to secure the border, even trying to make it, including Biden's administration, so that Texas cannot put up barriers, and they're trying to make Texas tear down the barriers it has installed. Now, one of the sole roles of the government is to, of course, secure the borders of the federal government, is to secure the nation's borders. At the very least, the federal government is delinquent on its responsibilities. But as this
mass invasion of the country is happening, hundreds of thousands of people every single month. You have states of emergencies being issued all across the United States. You have states having to foot the bill for illegal aliens, not just in terms of housing them and feeding them, but even providing, of course, medical care, which is destroying the basic livelihood of many American citizens. Now, this is, I would say, is beyond just a border security issue. It's also allowing criminals to commit crimes in America, allowing American citizens to be killed by non-citizens, not properly enforcing the laws, and a whole lot of other things that could even be deemed crimes against humanity if you want to take it to that level. Trump mentions that Biden surrendered in Afghanistan, led to many hundreds dead. It was a very bad pullout. Remember, Hillary Clinton was facing investigations and possible criminal charges for something similar. Remember when you had, of course, it was the incident where you had the American embassy get attacked in one of these, Arab countries. Hillary Clinton, of course, said, at this point, what does it matter? And she talked, of course, about how many Americans were killed, including a U.S. diplomat. Now, Biden could be implicated potentially on that as well, as could, for example, George Bush for potential crimes against humanity with Iraq and Afghanistan. There are potentials with all of this, although presidential immunity and so on has prevented those kinds of charges from ever happening. It's not off the table if the Supreme Court wants to rule that, presidents do not have presidential immunity, especially given that the invasion of Iraq was done based on bad intel and notably fake news reporting from New York Times claiming that there were, weapons of mass destruction and so on, based on fake claims that were issued in which they reported falsely, which of course led to many Americans being killed in the field of war. Trump mentions that, of course, Biden handed over billions of dollars worth of our best military to make a ruling in favor of the narrative from, Colorado or from Maine. It's very likely not going to hold up. And so the argument on presidential immunity has no real